Good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Strategic and Technical Planning Committee on Tuesday the 23rd of September 2025. I'm Councillor Duncan Sarry-House and I will be the chair for this meeting. The meeting is being live streamed and is available to view on the Council's website, and by attending this meeting you consent to being filmed. The Planning Committee is not a public meeting, but a meeting to which the public is invited, and all attendees must comply with the ruling of the chair. Members of the public must not interrupt the meeting or cause undue disturbance. To support this, please switch your mobile phones or select silent mode for the duration of the meeting. Only those who have registered to speak in accordance with the speaking protocol will be invited to address the committee for a maximum of 3 minutes. This is limited to the first 3 people objecting, first 3 people supporting the application who have registered along with the town and parish councils or ward member. No additional materials are to be circulated to members of the committee today. We have one application to determine today, and the planning officer will be invited to present the report and recommendations. Next, I will invite members of the public who have registered to speak with Democratic and Governance Officer before the deadline to address the committee in the following order: public against, public support, applicant agent, town, parish council and ward members. Each speaker has a maximum of 3 minutes. Following on from the registered speakers, the planning officers will have the opportunity to address any salient points they wish to clarify, and committee members will be given the opportunity to ask questions of the planning officer before moving on to their debate. At the end of the debate, we will take a vote and I will declare the decision of the committee. Can I remind members that when we go into councillor questions and debate, please state your name and ward for the benefit of the public watching and speak directly into the microphones so that we can all hear you. If anyone is using Teams, please ensure you are on mute and your device volume is set to 0. Before we begin, just a few final points regarding general housekeeping. We're not expecting a fire alarm during today's meeting. However, should the alarm sound, please leave the building calmly and without delay, using the nearest fire exit, which is located through the main doors at the back of the chamber. Exiting at the main reception doors, the meeting will be formally adjourned at that point and will only resume once it's safe to do so. So today we have present myself, as I said, Councillor Duncan Sarry-House, Councillor Belinda Borden from Lyme and Charmouth, Councillor Matt Bell, Radipole, Councillor Tony Coombs, Verwood, Councillor Spencer Flower, Verwood, Councillor Craig Monks, Beminster, Councillor Belinda Rideout, Gillingham, Councillor Pete Roper, Portland, Councillor David Taylor, Charminster St Mary, and Councillor David Took, Cranbourne and Alderholt. We have apologies today from my Vice Chair, Councillor Dave Bolwell, and Councillor Richard Crabb. Officers involved in today's meeting include Megan Rochester, Senior Democratic and Governance Officer, Lindsay Watson, Senior Democratic and Government Officer, Phil Crowther, Senior Lawyer, Eleanor Godseer, Senior Planning Officer, Minerals and Waste, Felicity Hart, also Minerals and Waste Planning Manager. Can I ask members, are there any declarations of interest to declare? Councillor Borden.
Thank you, Chairman. I thought I should probably say that whilst I'm coming in with an open mind. I'm a carbon literacy trainer for town and parish councils, and I co-founded the Dorset Climate Action Network and work with a national group that works on a similar basis to support town and parish councils. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Are there any further disclosures of interest? No. Thank you. We've had a look at the minutes from the previous meeting. Are members content with those? And you're happy for me to sign them at the end of the meeting? I shall do so. Thank you. At this point, I believe those speaking from the public today will have been made aware that they can either make their representation now or after the officer's report. Have you chosen when you would like to speak?
We'll speak after the officer's report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so we move into application PVOC 2023-02762, Waddock Cross well site, Waddock Cross Afpuddle Dorchester DT2 8QY. And this will be presented by Eleanor Godseer and supported by Felicity. So when you're ready, the mic's yours.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, members. My name's Eleanor Godseer. I'm Senior Planning Officer in the Minerals and Waste team, and the application before you today is for Waddock Cross well site. The application is a variation of condition application, which seeks to vary conditions 2, which is the duration condition, which...
Can't hear, Chairman. Needs to speak closer to the microphone.
Eleanor, if I can encourage you, I know it's early in the morning, but to look at me when you speak, then you'll be looking at your microphone, and members will appreciate being able to hear everything that you have to say on this. Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Okay. So going back to the application, varying condition 2, which is the duration condition, which at the moment is duration till 2023, and it's seeking to vary it to 10 years to 2033. And the restoration condition, which has similar date, which is to be varied for another 10 years. So just giving you a perspective of where the application is, it's close to the Waddock Cross intersection, which is here, and the application site's actually on the Bovington Road, which is the C80 road. Its access is, if you can see my cursor just here, the B3390 is close to the application site, and I understand that you dealt with Hurst Farm a couple of weeks ago, and that is to the south of this site. Just to provide you some planning constraints for the site, the closest is the Oakerswood Triple SI, which is located directly to the east and the south of the site. Further away, we have the Oakers Bog, which is also, in addition to Triple SI, it is SAC, SPA, Ramsar European Site designations. There are a couple of listed buildings close to the site. We have Waddock Farmhouse and the associated granary, Oakerswood Cottage to the east of the site, and Oakerswood House. And also, just to point out, the River Froome, which is a Triple SI site as well. Some site photographs which were taken when I was there last. We've got the access road which goes from the Bovington Road to the travels to the east towards the site, and you can see the bund here in the distance. And then when you're in the actual well site, we have the eastern bund here and Ochre's Wood behind it. On site at the moment, there are 2 beam pumps. We've got WX2, sorry, my curse, WX2 and WX3. And quite a bit of the equipment has been removed from site, but there is an example of a storage tank on the western side near the western bund. And this is just a photo of the central of the site showing the beam pumps in the middle. So as I told you before, the application is a variation of condition application, so it's varying the date from 1st of June 2023, and it's seeking to amend it to 2033, and also in the restoration conditions, similarly, 31st of March 2023 to 2033. So in terms of actual operations on site, that was approved within the original permission. So I've just pulled out all the site plans for each phase, but that has already been approved. So I'll just talk you through what they were. So phase 1 was production stage with WX2 and WX3, and that's pretty much where the site is at the moment, with the emission of the storage tanks which have been taken off site since they stopped producing oil in 2014. So the second phase, which is where they probably, if they were to continue implementing this permission, is where they would pretty much recommence from, would be proposing to drill a side track of WX3. And then phase 3 is extending the site, and this would include removing an existing bund and creating a new bund further west in preparation for drilling 2 additional wells. Phase 4 is where they would start the drilling of WX5 and then WX6, and then production of all the wells producing oil up to 2033. I just thought it helpful to give you some sections to show each of the phases. So the current site is similar to phase 1. And then phase 2 showing the drilling rigs in place, which would be there for approximately 6 weeks and then taken off site. Phase 3, extending the site, so removing the bund, creating a new one. And then phase 4, again, having rigs on site for approximately 6 weeks. And then production for the duration until 2033 is what they're seeking, showing the beam pumps in place. So moving to policy considerations, most of it's within the officer's report, but I just wanted to highlight a few of the documents. So the National Planning Policy Framework is central, and I've just pulled out paragraph 161, which highlights that the planning system should support the transition to net zero by 2050. And also our paragraph 222, which is one that we use all the time in minerals and waste to ensure that we have it's essential that there is sufficient supply of minerals, and minerals can only be worked where they are found, and best use needs to be made for them to secure their long-term conservation. And the second document I've just highlighted there is the overarching National Policy Statement for Energy that was published in November 2023. And in that it supports an energy system to ensure supply of energy always remains secure, reliable, affordable and consistent, and that there is a transformational approach towards solutions in terms of climate change. So in order to use unabated natural gas and crude oils for heating, etc., that oil and gas will still be needed during the transition to net zero economy. Then moving on to our more local policies, I just wanted to pull out the Natural Environment, Climate Change and Ecology Strategy, which is an update from the original strategy in relation to the Dorset Council climate emergency and ecological emergency. And that document provides some missions or steps towards net zero, which you can see in that little flow chart. We're aiming for a carbon neutral council by 2040 and a carbon neutral Dorset by 2050. And the other document I wanted to just highlight was the growth strategy, which was approved earlier this year, which provides some solutions in terms of working towards green energy. So moving to the planning considerations, just a bit of background. When this application was first submitted in 2023, the applicant provided a screening, that asked for a screening request for environmental impact assessment. And so at that point, we looked at it and we issued a screening decision which concluded that the application was not EIA development. Since then, we've had the Finch Supreme Court judgment, and there were some key messages from that judgment which are directly applicable to this application. The Finch was related to a well site at Horse Hill in Surrey. And just to give you some perspective on this Waddock Cross and Horse Hill, Horse Hill was proposing a production for 20 years of 3.3 million tonnes of oil. Waddock Cross, in comparison, is a production for 8 years, and it's estimated 138,000 tonnes. So we've got 3.3 million versus 138,000 tonnes of oil produced. So there were some key messages from Finch that I'll just very briefly summarise. It was a very lengthy judgment, but that there is a virtual certainty that oil extracted from the ground will result in the release of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere and will contribute to global warming. And the EIA directive does not impose any geographical limit on environmental effects of a project. And so, based on that, it is highlighted that direct and indirect effect on climate from extracting oil needs to be assessed. So we had that screening decision early on before this judgment, which didn't include detailed information on climate change or carbon dioxide generated by the site in terms of burning that oil. So moving on, the applicant then submitted a screening assessment or screening request at the beginning of this year, and they did provide that information to us. So I've just highlighted the table for you, which shows the levels which were estimated. So based on the 138,000 tonnes over 8 years, they're estimating various figures which in terms of tonnes of CO2, and then that is then compared to the carbon budget, which is broken down into 3 groups, so 2023, 2027, and then up to 2037. So you can see the percentages which have been provided, and they are all under less than 0.0% of each UK carbon budget. Now, apparently these are based on, in terms of determining whether it's significant or not, is based on an IEMA 5% is considered to not be significant. So this is a 0.02%, which is significantly lower than that. So my colleague in environmental assessment looked through these figures, and they have also agreed that it was not significant. And the screening request, the second screening request, was concluded to not be EIA development in terms of this current application. Moving to some of the other planning considerations, a big piece of work for this application was to update all the ecological surveys, and took substantial time. This site is of regional importance in terms of commuting and foraging bats, and 3 of the rarest bats were sighted using the site. So I've just highlighted a few of the mitigations because they were not within the original permission. So the first one is the fence, which is proposed around the eastern and the southern side of the site. This has been considered by our landscape officer, and he's satisfied that the fence would not cause any concern in terms of the landscape. The reason for the fence is that it's assisting in terms of light spill towards the Triple SI. And there will be hoods on all the light. It will be directed into the well site, but this additional measure of having a fence was suggested by the ecologist, and we have secured that through condition in the suggested conditions. And then on the right we have the ecological mitigation which is proposed. So there's several hibernaculars to encourage reptiles on the site. There's some wood stacks for insects, in particular the stag beetle, and then a reptile receptor area for any reptiles that may be found on the main site, and species-rich grassland. And these measures are also secured through condition. In terms of neighbours, I've just highlighted the distances to the closest neighbours to the site. In terms of noise, operating hours, anything related to neighbouring amenity, there were conditions on the original permission, and these have been reviewed and updated as suggested conditions for the current application. And I've also just flagged up the highway figures in terms of the operation of the site. So we've got each of the phases. You'll note that for instance, the drilling for a 5-week period, they're suggesting that there'll be an average of 8 HGVs in terms of the moving equipment onto site and then taking it back off once the drilling is completed. And then I'll just highlight the production, which would be HGVs, 1 per day to take oil from the site, because the oil is stored in tanks, and then it is taken to Forley, which is near Southampton, for refining. And I've just, the map there just shows the route of the HGVs. So they would leave the site and travel eastwards along the Bovington Road, and then up north to the wider network towards Southampton. In terms of cessation, the original application didn't have any conditions which covered either permanent cessation if the site were to stop producing early. And so in terms of, it's just in terms of allowing for, if permanent cessation has commenced on site, that we would have the scope to be able to ask them to restore the site early, return it to agriculture. That condition, a condition was circulated to you yesterday. It has been changed slightly in response to the agent has had a look at the wording as well. So we've mainly just taken the bit which refers directly to the Town and Country Planning Act, because we've specified below what would constitute permanent cessation below. So it gives some certainty in terms of what the applicant has done in terms of whether it's ceased, and also for our monitoring officer to keep an eye on that as we go forward. So in taking most of the conclusions from the report, extending the duration of the development until 2033 would be within the transition period towards net zero in 2050 and would be acceptable in principle. Whilst there is an acknowledged contribution to greenhouse emissions, both directly and indirectly, the effects of the proposal on climate change in this case are not considered to be significant at a county or UK level. The proposal, along with the biodiversity mitigation and enhancement secured by condition, would not adversely affect biodiversity on and around the site. The addition of the closed bordered fencing on the eastern and southern side of the application site would not impact upon the landscape character of the area. Traffic movements would be low and would not adversely affect highway capacity or safety. And then the conditions of the original permission have been reviewed and updated to secure the other such as residential amenity to the adjacent Oakers Wood, landscape character, groundwater protection, highway safety. And the conditions are suggested to secure restoration of the site to agriculture in the event of early cessation of production. So the application is recommended for grant of planning permission subject to conditions. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that. We now move to public participation, and the first speaker I have is, I hope I'm going to say this correctly, Vicky Elcote.
Simon Whipple went first.
Absolutely. Very happy to fight it out amongst yourselves. So Simon Whipple, and I understand you're speaking on behalf of Kirsty Clough?
That's correct, yes.
The Wheeled Action Group.
I'm so sorry. I actually found it quite hard to hear what you said, sir. Could you repeat that question?
Absolutely. We were establishing who was going to speak first, and I understand that you're making a representation on behalf of Kirsty Clough. Is that correct? Okay. Your time starts when you start.
Thank you. The applicant's planning statement says there is a need to consider the planning balance between the timely restoration of the Waddock Cross well site and the ability to undertake a further appraisal and potential production of oil from the Bridport sandstone. He goes on to say, national policy requires operators to provide for restoration and aftercare at the earliest opportunity. However, there is a need to maximise security of supply with the uncertainties of relying on imports of international gas supplies. We consider that the planning balance tips strongly towards the restoration of the site and not towards the retention or further development. This application breaches policy HY1 in the Bournemouth, Dorset and Pools Mineral Strategy of 2014. This site is an oil, not a gas site. Around 80% of the UK's crude oil is exported and does not contribute to security of supply. Also, the Climate Change Committee's plans for reaching our climate targets indicate that by 2050, oil demand in the UK will drop to less than 1/6 of what it is today. Finally, this application has provided no evidence that this well site would now be commercially viable. Given that it was not deemed viable in 2014, when the average global oil price was much higher than it is now, it is hard to see it could be viable in the future. This application is clearly in breach of the mineral strategy. Policy HY1G states that well sites should be restored at the earliest practicable opportunity if oil and gas extraction is found not to be economically viable. Given that the site was effectively mothballed in 2014 due to the high water content of the oil extracted, restoration should have commenced over a decade ago. If it had been, then restoration may well have been completed by now. We urge councillors to reject this application and enforce the original planning condition which required the operator to clear the site before the 1st of June 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Whipple. That's your 3 minutes. Who's next? Philip. So Philip May. Now, are you speaking on behalf of anyone other than Sarah Finch, or?
Speaking on behalf of Sarah Finch, this is her statement that I will now give.
Thanks.
Is this working? Sorry, I'm speaking on behalf of Sarah Finch. This is her statement that I will now give. I won a landmark Supreme Court ruling last year, which means that the climate impacts of downstream greenhouse gas emissions from the combustion of fossil fuels from proposed projects must now be considered by decision makers in some cases. The applicant has assessed that burning the oil produced from this site could result in the release of around 350,000 tonnes of greenhouse gases between 2026 and 2033. They concluded that, as a percentage of the UK's carbon budgets, the impact on the climate will not be significant. This framing is deeply flawed. Any individual project can claim to be not significant when compared in this way. Indeed, the same argument was made about a third runway at Heathrow Airport. But climate change is not driven by isolated percentages. It is driven by cumulative emissions across all sectors and projects. Also, a comparison only against national carbon budgets is meaningless. Government guidance, which the officers provide, says that an assessment of the significance of Scope 3 emissions as carried out here must be considered in light of the global effect of greenhouse gas emissions. It says the environmental statement must consider the cumulative effects of the proposed project with other existing and planned future projects in a global context. The applicant has failed to do this. They have ignored the current state of the climate, disregarded global emissions pathways, and omitted any consideration of cumulative impacts. As a result, their conclusion that the project's climate impact is not significant is demonstrably false. This is not just a matter of interpretation. A recent study from University College London concluded committed emissions from consuming the oil and gas in the world's existing fields would exceed the remaining global carbon budget for 1.5 degrees C by a long way. To stay within the 1.5 degrees C carbon budget, some oil and gas fields will need to close before the end of their economic life, and all underdeveloped fields will need to remain untapped. Several other studies from well-respected bodies support these conclusions. We urge the committee to reject this planning application because of the unacceptable impact on climate change it will inevitably cause. Thank you.
Philip, thank you very much. You had a further 30 seconds to go, so thank you for your timely representation. I move to Vicky, and your time will start when you start.
I'm speaking today on my own account with the support of Dorset Climate Action Network. Earlier this year, the International Criminal Court of Justice issued a powerful warning: the continued production of fossil fuels may breach international law. It described climate change as an existential problem of planetary proportions that imperils all forms of life and the very health of our planet. That is not abstract rhetoric, it is a call to action. Everyone here has a role to play in confronting this crisis. Dorset Council, through its planning decisions, holds real power to shape the county's future. By rejecting this application, councillors can help meet the emission reduction targets set out in the county's Natural Environment, Climate and Ecology Strategy and contribute meaningfully to the UK's climate commitments. As you've heard, you have before you an assessment of the greenhouse gas emissions that would arise if you approve this application. The applicant has wrongly concluded that these are not significant. If approved, this site could become the second largest onshore oil production facility in the UK after Wytch Farm. The applicant estimates that emissions arising from this application could release around 350,000 tonnes of CO2 equivalent. I could take a return flight to New York over 200,000 times for that amount of carbon emissions. That's a major environmental impact in terms of releasing a pollutant that would otherwise not be in the atmosphere. If you refuse permission today, the oil will stay in the ground. The officer's report rightly states that this requires a value judgment. Is this level of harm acceptable? Maybe it would be if it delivered energy security or helped with the transition to net zero. But this is a drop in the ocean of supply, and the UK already compares well to other OECD countries in terms of energy security. The applicant says, let's assume the oil will be used here, but that's unlikely as more than 4/5 of onshore oil is exported. Dorset's own climate strategy is clear. It says, whilst Dorset's emissions fell by over 1/10 in the 2 years to 2020, action for the county needs to go faster to reach our targets. Allowing this site to be retained and developed will not accelerate progress, it will reverse it. This application is incompatible with climate science and policy and Dorset's own environmental commitments. I urge you to reject it. And because the officer didn't mention it, can I also mention all the local people, the local organisations and community groups who objected to this application with other concerns about issues like traffic, protecting groundwater, lighting and biodiversity, which haven't got a mention here this morning yet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vicky. We now move to the agent, Paul Foster.
Thank you, Chairman. Egton is very appreciative of the support and assistance that's been given by Senior Planning Officer Eleanor Goddessar and the Natural Environment Team Manager Nikki Taylor over the past couple of years. There's been a comprehensive number of ecological surveys carried out on site, and Egton are pleased that the proposed mitigation package of measures recommended by our appointed ecologists has been accepted by your officers. I attended a meeting with Puddle and Turners Puddle Parish Council in June 2023 to present the proposals and answer questions about the application. Although the Parish Council has formally objected, they expressed their wish to work with Egdon in preparing a future planning application for the site to manage noise, lighting and traffic, which Egdon is very happy to do. The purpose of this application before you is to regularise the existing development on site. It is Egdon's intention to come forward with a new application which will seek permission to convert one of the existing wells to a water re-injection well, as well as a reconfiguration of the site. In January 2025, Egdon submitted an annual breakdown of expected oil reserves that would be produced at Waddock Cross between 2026 and 2033. Egdon also calculated the resultant greenhouse gas emissions from the combustion of this oil, which would be used in vehicles and in heating homes, and compared these against the UK carbon budgets for the relevant periods. Based upon this evidence, your officers confirmed in a second screening opinion in March that the proposed development was non-EIA. That screening opinion specifically considered the impacts upon climate change from the burning of oil produced at Waddock Cross. It concluded that these emissions would account for less than 0.02% of the relevant UK carbon budgets. These carbon emissions are not considered to result in a potentially significant impact upon climate change. Your officer's report, therefore, has taken due and careful consideration of the potential for likely significant effects arising from the combustion of the extracted hydrocarbons. So in conclusion, this proposal is in accordance with both national and local plan policies. Government guidance gives great weight to the benefits of mineral extraction. There's nothing in the relevant development plan policies which restricts onshore hydrocarbon production where the impacts are mitigated and acceptable. I therefore ask members to follow your officer's recommendation and grant planning permission along with a set of conditions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Paul. So I now turn to the officer to ask, is there anything that you would like to address from those comments?
Thank you, Chair. There's just one issue I just wanted to clarify. The representations for this application are all summarised in the report, and what I've presented this morning is supplementing that report. So that's all within that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So now I ask members if you have any technical questions that you wish to ask of the officer. So I can see we have David Taylor, Chalmers St Mary's, and Belinda Borden, and then Councillor Took. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Chancellor St Mary, David Taylor, Parish Council and Town. The question I wanted to bring up first of all is there's two things really about the description about first of all, the application. We've got 23 to 33 with the 10-year extension, even though we're in 2025. So would that not balance the application to be extended to 2035? I'm trying to work out the semantics of that one. The second question is that you lightly brought up the injection of water back into the ground with the oil extraction. I did see this briefly mentioned, but I just wondered whether or not it's actually going to be in action or it's going to happen, because this completely changes the carbon problems we have and the pollution problems we have, or looking at, could actually contribute to the atmosphere. So therefore, I really need clarification on that to see whether or not that's going to happen. How does it differentiate the figures of what is being proposed today? Can I come back after those, please, Chair?
Absolutely. Eleanor.
So in terms of the first question, the application was submitted in 2023 and it in the description, it is asking for a further 10 years. So we would then, the condition has been varied so that it is to 2033 as opposed to, say, because today it's taken from when it's submitted rather than when it's determined. So we are going to have a condition that's to 2023, not say 2025.
Thank you, yeah, but the fact that the application has actually expired, so therefore, where are we with that?
So the application for this current variation of condition was submitted before the application expired. So as long as that's come in before it's expired, then we then are able to determine this current application, even though it's taken some time to get to this point due to the ecological surveys.
Are we content with that, Councillor?
I'm trying to work out where the legality of this really is, because it's going to be wavering between 23, 25, 24. You know, we kind of look at a figure of where is it, you know, because that is, we're actually applying this today to give a 10-year application. That's what this process is all about today. And therefore, to me, it's not, it's 8 years. So where are we? That's the legal side. I'm just hopefully can get some clarification.
Phil, do you want to see if you can answer that?
So, Councillor Taylor, is your question essentially how long would the permission last? Because the application was made in 23 for 10 years. So the application was to vary the condition by extension by 10 years. So it would run to 33. Sorry, to 33. And the sorry, Chair, I hadn't skimmed that far through, but I think the condition would have a fixed end date rather than, is that right? So the condition giving the lifetime of the permission in effect has a fixed end date. So it's not, it doesn't say 10 years, it says 2033. So that's the condition which would give you a fixed end point. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Borden, Lyman Charmouth. You have had a supplementary. You can come back in at a later time, should you so indicate to the Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. Belinda Borden, Lamb Regis and Charmouth. I've got quite a few questions, but I think they'll partly, the answer to the first one might change the others. So if I can just ask you to clarify this idea of significance being judged by 0.02% of each relevant UK carbon budget. I'm just curious, I think you did mention in your report, but I couldn't hear everything. So who decides the level of significance?
So, as I mentioned in the presentation, IEMA, which is the Institute of, hang on, I'll just double check the acronyms, apologies. Yeah, I knew there was environmental, just wanted to get it correct. They suggest a figure of 5%, which is high. This one is coming out at 0.02%, which is significantly less than that, like very significantly less. In terms of the screening, I'll just explain that the applicant puts in a screening request along with the associated information to support that request. And then we send it to our environmental assessment team, who are specialists in environmental impact assessment. And they have gone over the report and have concluded that they're acceptable of that conclusion, that 0.02% is not significant for this particular project.
Thank you. So we heard that there is guidance from the Finch, I think it was said from the Finch judgment that the significance should be judged in terms of the global picture. And I'm curious to know why we don't also look at the significance in terms of our local targets. I've just got a few questions on the accuracy of the data, if that's all right. So on the spreadsheet, column 4 doesn't seem to apply the right emissions factor. So the figure is different to the ones that are the factor that's shown in the top column. And column 5 doesn't seem to sum the well-to-tank emissions and the combustion emissions, which means if you recalculate the figures, the forecast that the emissions aren't significant could be mistaken, although you have clarified that the level that's recommended by IEMA is 5%. But if we look at the figures in relation to Dorset Council, the Dorset Council area, they're equivalent to almost a quarter of Dorset Council's area-wide emissions for 2023, which is the last year that there's government data. An equivalent to 3 to 5%, depending whether you use the figures in the spreadsheet or the recalculated figures of our local per capita allocation of the UK carbon budget. Can I also point out there's a few mistakes in terms of the targets. Sorry, bear with me. So the report states in point 15.1, at a national level, the government aims to reduce carbon emissions by 80% by 2050 and fully decarbonise the electricity grid by 2035. But this is incorrect. The government aim is net zero by 2050 and to decarbonise the grid by 2030. Point 16.8, the net zero strategy, October 2021, sets out the government's vision. This is the previous government strategy. Point 16.10, the current application seeks the continued operation of the site to an amended expiry date of the 1st of June 2033. In Dorset, the council is aiming for the county to be carbon neutral by 2050. But our net zero date for the county is 2045, not 2050, because we had a change of administration and the targets were brought forward by 5 years. So I'm concerned that the figures do give a different picture, and I'm just curious to know why, if the recommendations in the judgments that we've heard recommend looking at the global picture because of the carbon budget, the Climate Change Committee's evidence that there is more going in than will enable us to reach our targets. But I'm also obviously concerned as a local representative that the impact has not been assessed in terms of our own climate and ecological strategy. So just wondering if you're able to comment on those. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Are you content you've got all of those points? There's quite a lot to unpack there, but I'm sure the Councillor can help if you have missed anything.
Thank you, Chair. I feel that there's quite a lot of questions there that I don't feel I can answer right now, so it might be that I need to get some further information for them.
I'm very content once we've taken more questions that if you need an adjournment to seek information elsewhere, then we can do that for a short period.
Do you think? I just don't know where we can get the... Thank you, Chair, yes. If we can adjourn, that would be helpful, thank you.
Councillor, we will come back to those after an adjournment, but I'm just mindful that we have Councillor Took, Cranbourne and Alderholt, and prior to moving on, we will take an adjournment and get some detail for you. Councillor Took.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to get some timelines straight, first of all. This was supposed to be ceased production by 1st of June 2023, but they put an application in May, which meant that they clearly didn't need to cease because we'd hold it in suspension, as it were. But did you say in your presentation that in March they should have submitted a plan to decommission the site? Did that happen or did it not?
Thank you, Chair. There wasn't a decommissioning document submitted. I don't know where you got that figure from. No, I didn't. Sorry.
Councillor Took, I think we have a failure of technology there. If you can just try and activate your microphone again.
It's working now. Yeah, I thought you said during the presentation that there was something in March. What's that?
Helena, have you got that? If I can ask Councillor Matt Bell, because I think you have the point in the presentation. If you could just assist the officer with that reference, that would be great.
Yeah,
I believe Councillor Took is referring to condition 3 on 16.1 of the report, which mentions no later than 31st March 2023, a scheme for the restoration of the site, including timescales for the work to be undertaken, shall be submitted to and approved in writing. And you can see the rest in the report.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Yes, that's precisely what I was referring to. So, given that that was March was before May when they put the application in, did that restoration scheme ever materialise? Was anything ever produced?
Thank you for the clarity. No, that wasn't received in March 2023. Thank you.
Do we know why? Was it just idleness on their part? Or do we know why did they not keep to the permissions given? And does that give us any hope that they'll keep to permissions in future?
Just to respond that we would have to ask the applicant why they didn't submit that at that time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The second point I just want to make is this idea of significance. And you talk about 0.02 as being insignificant compared to 5%. I think if this came up with a 4% increase, we'd be aghast at it. So even that would be less than significant. The point about small percentages collectively like this is that I think the Scots have a phrase that many a mickle makes a muckle. In other words, lots of little things make a big thing. And there are lots of little things going on in the world. This is another little thing, but it's death by 1,000 cuts. So I think we need to be very careful about saying, oh, it's not significant. I don't accept that. So, final question, is this going to be, if they get permission, are they going to be immediately extracting oil at the earliest opportunity? Or is this a holding operation so that they could, if they wanted to, extract oil in the future over the next 10 years? at which point perhaps they can put in another application for a further 10 years.
You content?
Just to respond in terms of the applicant, they have been quite open in terms of saying that this application is to keep the site as an oil well site, and that they are intending to put a new planning application in the future. We have got that early cessation condition, so it to a certain extent would give them sort of 2 years to decide what they want to do. They either would work within that cessation condition and be required to restore within the 2-year time period, or they may plan to put in a full planning application to do the operation in terms of drilling and new well sites in a separate planning application. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that help, Councillor?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any further technical questions at this time? Councillor Flower.
I've been encouraged by what I've heard to ask a question, Chairman, because oil's used for many purposes, and we've talked an awful lot this morning about burning it, and yet oil's used for plastics. So is there any evidence here? I mean, you get heavy oil, which normally comes from the Middle East. You get light oil, which may well come from the UK. Do we know what purpose this oil, what quality the oil is, what potential purpose it's going to be used for? Because everything we touch in this chamber has got plastic in it. So I think we should be careful that we focus all our time and energy on wanting to reduce our carbon footprint and all that sort of stuff and burning oil for energy. But there are many other uses, and I think we need to be careful that we don't get ourselves convinced in one direction when it may well be in more than one direction.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. Do you have any idea of the use of this oil? You said it was going towards Southampton. Does that mean the refinery at Fawley?
Yes, the oil will be taken to Fawley, which I understand is a refinery, and so I mean it could be then taken on to be used with any use associated with refined oil.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further technical questions? Councillor David Taylor, Charminster St Mary's.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I did. Well, I'll ask the question again, which was in the first phase. The fact of putting water back into the ground from oil extraction was one of my key questions on there. The reason I'm asking this is the fact is that is there been a possibility of looking at the water table, and also the fact is the river, because the fact is we've got possibility of pollutants going back into the ground to actually affect the water table, and that's a key question because of Poole Harbour as well. Because I want to know about the fact of the runoff and going in, because it has been mentioned that this is going to be a process they are going to be doing. And I just want to make sure that we've safeguarded the area and the environment for it as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Happy to take that one?
I will take that, thank you. Simply to say I will ask that question in adjournment. My understanding is that the water needs to be put back into the reservoir to maintain pressure so that they can then draw the oil for production. I'll double check those. Thank you.
Councillor Belinda Borden, Lyme and Charmouth.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just this question of significance, because if the figures are reworked using the correct the value of the can't remember what it was now, well to tank, it shows that in the fifth carbon budget, the production would reach 4.7% of the local budget. So that does somewhat change our judgment on the significance, I feel.
Thank you very much. Any further technical questions before we go to an adjournment? No? Okay, so I maybe have some help. As I understand it, in other planning applications that I've looked at, where there's an expiration of a permission, they still have permission to be on the site, but it's the actual permission for extraction that has expired. As I understand it, they can't make an application for an extension until expiration, and were there to be minded to apply for an extension, then they wouldn't have initiated the restoration application. So if you could come back with that, that would be great. And I look forward to hearing the responses to the other questions. So we'll break for, I'm not sure how far outside of this chamber you're going to have to seek information. So I'll give you 15 minutes, which also might be a convenient comfort break for councillors and members of the public. So 15 minutes from now. Okay, welcome back to this strategic and technical planning meeting, Tuesday, 23rd of September 2025, and we rejoin after a 15-minute adjournment. So my first question is to the officer. Have you been able to establish answers to the questions that the councillor raised?
Thank you, Chair. Partially, and I think we've not got enough information at hand to be able to answer it comprehensively. So we would like to work with the applicant to get that information to reassure the committee.
Thank you very much. Are there any further technical questions at this point before we look at options? I have a couple which I would like to throw into the mix. The transport from the Bovington Road, I understand where that goes and comes from. I'd be very interested to know the route beyond that road. We considered with the Hurst Farm application that there may be an alternative route other than going through Bere Regis, and if we're talking about going to Southampton, I'm guessing that it's going to go along to the A35, and then I would have thought sensibly out on the A31. But if we could confirm that, I say we're mindful of the local plan, the expansion of the first school, all of which those traffic movements would go in that area, and that could be avoided, I would suggest. Felicity Hart is familiar with the suggested route from the Hurst Farm, so she may be able to help you with that in conversations with the applicant. I'm also very interested to know why we don't consider the impact of emissions locally. I take the point that Councillor Borden has made. Everything is relative. If we had a mass shooting in Poole, it would be quite significant. If you say deaths in a mass shooting globally, it's not really going to impact on the population of the world. So I think that's quite a stark analogy, but I think it cuts to the chase. Everything is relative. So members, I'm going to ask you if you would be minded to defer this item so that we can have more detail, better information, so that you might be able to make a better choice, or you may feel that you have enough information at the moment to do that. So the option of deferral is down to you. So if you would choose that, happy to take a proposal in a second. Okay, and what are you content for?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to propose that we actually... Is that right? Sir, I'd like to put forward the proposal of deferment, please, regarding on the information that we do need for this application regarding the quality of facts. We need to have the information.
Thank you. So it's a proposal to defer from Councillor David Taylor, Charnock St Mary. Councillor Borden.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. So, yes, I'll agree to second, but I just wondered if I could just clarify some broad principles of the sort of things I've raised as well, so that they can be taken into account.
Thank you, Councillor. So if you're able to, just for openness, transparency and the record, if you're able to give us the broad areas that you wish to question, very content for you to be able to send a more detailed question to the officer, and then on returning from the deferral, if you are able to address the exact question that you have been asked, so that anybody watching online or in the meeting knows exactly what has been asked and what you're answering.
Yeah, so it was really some more guidance on the scale, that the significance, the sort of percentage of significance applies to, and whether it's possible to make an assessment in relation to global carbon budgets, national and local. I'm also be interested on the comments on the fact that this is not government guidance. So I've not come across this concept of a percentage of significance before. And it's not government or the Independent Climate Change Committee's guide. It's from a trade association, which has now been renamed to the Institute of Sustainability and Environmental Professionals, I believe. So you might have to look up ICEP rather than IEMA. And also there's a number of pieces of Dorset Council relevant policy guidance, as well as MPPF comments, which were not included in the report, which I'm happy to pass through. But for example, the Bournemouth, Dorset and Pools mineral strategy does make a reference to a minimisation of impacts which could increase the effects of climate change. So I'll pass all those through for consideration. Thank you.
Are any other members minded to submit in writing any questions to the officer, or are you content with those? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my question regarding the water table, and would you like me to put that in writing?
If that's the broad topic, then yes, that's fine. Okay, so we have a proposal to defer, and that's been seconded. So in the usual way, with a simple show of hands, those in favour of a deferral? Got that? Thank you very much. Those against? And that is all of us. So there's no abstentions. So that was 7 for deferral and 3 against. So this item will return to us when we have more information. Do we have any urgent items for today? And do we have any exempt business? No. Thank you. So I will sign the minutes in a moment. I thank you all for coming today and for your questions, to the members of the public for their representations and for the officer report and time, democratic services and legal support. End of the meeting, 11:30 a.m.